Okay, so just as quick clarification, 90% of the footage and script and recording in the first and third part of this whole thing was recorded and written and edited together basically right after the second episode of Creature Commandos came out and got cut in half and delayed when it became clear we were going to get the Superman trailer, and then went from being a 2-part thing to a 3-part thing when we actually got the trailer, so that I could get some of this together and get some reactions into it up front. And so now I just want to get a few of those right on the front of it and then not delay it any longer, because frankly it's right before Christmas Eve and stuff doesn't get posted, nobody gets paid. Everything you're going to see after this point was done more or less before the trailer even came out. And that's why, in lieu of being a plot prediction thing, it's more of a thematic prediction. Hey, some of this feels like it's about Disney Marvel stuff than about plot prediction stuff. As for plot stuff, which I was guessing at a little bit and now seems to have shown up in the trailers, hey, surprise, surprise, looks like I called some of this again. First off, wow, what a fucking trailer that was, right? But also, I'm glad that it's a, hey look, holy shit, Superman trailer, and not just a, hey look, Easter eggs for fans trailer, but wow, what a bunch of cool little things for fans trailer. Holy shit, that's Guy Gardner. Holy shit, that's Hawkgirl. Holy shit, Mr. Terrific. Interesting pull. His powers are he's good at all the things and you can't take his photo. That's kinda cool. Look, that's Metamorpho and Stag Industries, the company that makes Metamorpho. That's unusual. I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be the engineer from The Authority. Cool. She's supposed to be in the movie. Big monster. Awesome. More thematically, I'm not sure you can get a cooler statement of intent thing from what this project looks like than starting out with Superman, a character who has been on a meta level shit kicked out of him on screen in recent years, falling out of the sky, looking like he's got beat up, and what comes to save him? Krypto the Superdog, a symbol of goofy-ass Silver Age stuff that the movies have been too cool to do pretty much forever, showing up to save the day as like a meta statement on this is what we're doing now to get this franchise out of its rut. That is perfect. Just statement right up front as this is what we're going to do to be different and save this franchise from itself and the bullshit that it's been through in this, 10 plus years of grim and gritty Man of Steel, Nolanverse, Snyderverse era horseshit that the DC movies have been stuffed into for so long. Beautiful, beautiful. People want to know why I trust James Gunn. First thing right up front in this trailer is Krypto the fucking Superdog. That's why. In terms of what you're going to see discussed later on into the parts of this episode that were filmed before, look at the Justice League International, or what looks like a version of the Justice League International, all wearing sharp little suits that all seem to say, hey, we all work for the same person or the same agency. Isn't that kind of interesting? There looks like there's a lot of different corporate guys in this. Not only Luthor Corp, but Max Lord is in the movie, and clearly Stag Industries, the guy that makes Metamorpho, seems to be part of this plot. Isn't that interesting? Who is this guy that Superman is fighting that looks like he's a match for him that we don't see his face? That's interesting stuff. Love the way this looks. Love, like I already said, the use of the leitmotif from the John Williams music. This somehow looks completely different from what I think anyone could have expected, but also like exactly what I wanted, and can't wait to talk more about it. I have a very strong sense that I'm about to be more right about this than I thought I was, and also like something completely different, and wow, does this look cool. But yeah, I enjoy the rest of the episode, which is more about how this is possibly a statement about the state of superhero movies, sort of moving away from an era where this has been completely dominated by the Marvel Studios era into something else. But the rest of the episode will lay the case out for that. If I don't end up putting up any more content between then and now, happy holidays to you and yours. Creature Commandos is right up front even more darkly than Squad was about its characters being effectively dehumanized prison slave labor forced to operate as a government dirty work team. Circe apparently has godlike powers, but her followers, they're just these drooling simps with guns. Meanwhile, a version of the Justice League International are apparently a plot point in Superman, and based on what little has been seen and snapped from that movie, they seem to have a very corporate mercenary military ops vibe happening as well. In fact, every version of big-time superheroism that's been seen so far outside of that DCEU-style League cameo from Peacemaker Season 1 that they're they're almost definitely going to retcon away somehow in Season 2, feels about the same way. Military-industrial complex tactical police aesthetics for heroes who are cynical or outright resentful about their place in the machinery, and a world that's gone jaded about the whole thing in response, either shrugging it off or being resentful right back to them. Oh, hey, they're also making The Authority in this first wave of projects? Gee, how about that? So, what does this look like?
This looks like a job for Superman.
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't need me to connect those dots. Things are bad and crummy in this superhero universe, and then Superman, classic style, back to basics, red underwear and all, is going to show up and go, there's a better way, and presumably there'll be conflicts over that, and that's the foundation of a story and overarching theme. Like, it's even in the official synopsis of the movie. He is the embodiment of truth, justice, in the American way, in a world that views this as old-fashioned. But it also feels more than a little bit, and I'm talking about subtext and cultural undercurrents here, because so far subtlety is not necessarily part of the equation, like a way to decisively stake out a position aesthetically, thematically, and even ideologically apart from the overriding influence that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has had on the genre for the last whole generation of the genre, specifically the unifying vision of superheroes as benevolently militarized status quo police figures. I will explain. Let's be very clear about two things. Firstly, the following is offered entirely as a neutral appraisal of themes and ideas, not some kind of anti-Disney or Marvel sucks rant. If anything, fans of this channel and my general presence in the pop criticism space during this period should already know that it's largely involved accusations that I'm too nice to that particular brand as mainstream entertainment cycles go, so I can only ask people to remember that while corporate art is still capable of being art, and I believe that, what I also believe and know is that corporations are still not capable of being your friends, so please grow the hell up and touch the grass. Secondly, it is simply a fact of time and reality that you cannot properly contextualize the MCU and the Avengers cycle specifically outside of the joint framework of being quintessential post-9/11 mid-war on terror narrative works and the dominant American-made blockbuster action entertainment franchise of the Obama era. They are fundamentally a pop art vision of redirecting the awesome and terrible, vengeance-driven American military might of the post-9/11 Bush era into a positivist global peacekeeper pose. Let's not succumb to historical revisionism here. I myself remain a ride-or-die Obama guy, especially after, look at what this bullshit we've been doing since, but if you want to understand his appeal and the inarguable success and failures of that era in American politics and culture, you have to understand that he was not, despite the whining of his political enemies, a kumbaya peace and brotherhood leader figure, but a brains and compassion make me a more effective ass-kicker leader figure. Obama may have built his political street cred on being a then-rare anti-war voice in the run-up to Iraq, but when he got to the big chair, he didn't ride in on a tide of war and capitalism are bad, I'm gonna put a stop to it. His pitch was conservatives are stupid cowboy dummies who did a bad job avenging 9/11 and got us stuck in Iraq and crashed the economy, and now I'm gonna fix it because I'm not a dummy. And, as his own vice president put it in the run-up to he and Obama crushing Mitt Romney in the 2012 re-election,
Osama bin Laden is dead and General Motors is alive!
Now, you can like that or you can dislike it. For the purposes of this discussion, I don't really give a shit because the facts are America, as its own interior culture and a global hegemonic popular culture, liked it a lot. The Obama era was popular, for good, for ill, for whatever, in the same way that Reaganism and JFK's Camelot were popular. And it's not a mere coincidence that the MCU and this reclamatory vision of American power and moral authority rose and peaked in the same relative generational time frame. The Avengers model commodification of what comic book movie peak performance looked like was a reflection of the Obama era geopolitical cultural reality that it emerged from. Facts. You don't have to like them, but you can't really deny them. Tony Stark is traumatized by not Al-Qaeda terrorists, but he learns to feel bad about his prior contributions to global instability instead, and responds by helping to form an explicitly military-style, but hopeful and only good strike force that can do good in the world with the same tools, but used the right way. Again, I make these as neutral observations of clear, obvious themes. The Avengers of the MCU, the in-universe gold standard for superheroes and super teams, are explicitly a wish fulfillment vision of the projection of US power on the global stage, but done the right way, only for good, by good guys, the way it's supposed to be. Basically those obnoxious woke imperialism memes, but presented with total sincerity of purpose.
This is S.H.I.E.L.D.?
This is what S.H.I.E.L.D's supposed to be.
And yes, it's engaged in some healthy self-criticism about just how cop-like its super characters are, but only ever up to the point of some cops and authorities are bad, or the Avengers are better as a private army operating with impunity rather than a government army also operating with impunity. The MCU ideal of superheroes and super teams is and largely continues to be not the weird pals in a clubhouse affect of the original Avengers comics, but rather a militarized police force who are good because everyone on the team is good, and it's worked. By and large, that aesthetic overriding the whole of the Marvel Cinematic Universe approach to everything worked, at least in large part, because for the roughly 15 years that this was the untouchable entertainment product of American cinema, militarized global police force with a positivist agenda wasn't just a solid shorthand for reimagining comic book characters to the big screen, it was the comfort fantasy that a lot of people traumatized by terrorism, badly managed ongoing wars, and global uncertainty actually wanted to indulge in. And while there are a lot of factors that have contributed to Marvel post-Endgame having a rocky time of things in some respect, which I think is overstated, but that's another show entirely, a big factor could arguably be that after almost 20 years, general sentiment and pop culture across the board isn't as on board with global police force either as an American ideal or a superhero fantasy ideal. And while the MCU is clearly in the process of grappling with that context, results are to be determined.
Put your feet up. Get more tattoos. Finish rounding out this Ant-Man character.
Meanwhile, over here in the new DC universe, being constructed on the narrative and world-building side by James Gunn, a guy who blew up mainstream by building out the weirdo alternative corner of the Marvel universe, got fired over some bullshit, returned in triumph, and then said, "See y'all, I'm out," after dropping one last banger and just styling all over everybody.
See you later, bitches. Have fun with your stupid.
It's not hard to see the leadoff taking explicit aim at Avengers-style corporatized military police heroes, and not just as something to goof on the way that, say, Invincible or The Boys does, or tries to do, but to specifically deconstruct and reject. So far, every hero team, or even just interaction between superheroes and other vectors of authority and power in the DCU across the official entries, as in the Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, Creature Commandos, or the maybe not official but not totally deleted from continuity because we're not being pedantic about that anymore.
It's not real. Right. So what's canon can really be whatever you want to be canon. If you want to pretend that, Greedo and Batman go on, adventures together, you can pretend Greedo and Batman go on adventures together.
Fictional characters. Am I getting through to you at all?
Paint a pretty consistent picture. Superhero teams seemingly all exist either as temporary creations or on-call active units of shady, ugly, morally compromised military-industrial figures like Amanda Waller, or corporate-backed operations like we see Cord Industries having become in Blue Beetle. The Justice Society, who show up in Black Adam and get mentioned in Shazam 2, and in both cases interact with characters who are part of the current continuity, exist but also seem to answer to government as an ops unit in whatever form the Justice League International is going to take. In Superman, in the comics, part of their whole gimmick was being a league backed by Max Lord's corporate sponsorship rather than independent heroism or government affiliation. Sean Gunn is playing Lord in the movie, by the way. So let me cut to the chase. From a certain point of view, a lot of the pre-Superman DCU status quo feels like a deliberate, dark, ironic mirroring of Avengers-style heroes and the MCU.
I know your intentions are good, but aren't the police a protective force that maintains the status quo for the wealthy elites?
Look, Lisa, it's McGriff, the crime dog. Hello, Lisa. Help me bite crime. Ruff, ruff.
Super teams of paramilitary conscripts, compromised would-be world police, or corporate-backed mercenaries commodified into projections of military-industrial power and global security as defined by those already in charge and with money to keep it that way. A scenario more or less identical to that of Disney's MCU, just without the benefit of it all working out because the deputized extrajudicial global police all turned out to be super nice dudes like holy shit we even lucked out and found the one not even a little bit racist guy from the 40s. In other words, we're being shown a DC universe that, while interesting and full of colorful characters, is thematically jaded, cynical, and broken in spirit about itself in the run-up to Superman because it's an allegory for the superhero movie genre, having been arrested in Marvel mode for so long and needing Superman, this specific original recipe, truth, justice, big blue Boy Scout who saves dogs and brings hope and probably kind of corny version of Superman, to show up and be a beacon of something alternative, the beginning of a new way forward for the franchise and the genre. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm seeing mirages that aren't there and reading too much into things. I don't really know anything about the plot of James Gunn's Superman movie that anyone else wouldn't know, and most of the supposed leaks and spoilers that have floated around for it either smelled like bullshit immediately or got quickly debunked. But suffice to say, if the Justice League International show up in the Superman movie and they feel even more like a Marvel team or an Avengers team than the Squad, the Commandos, or even the Society already did, and then a big part of the point we're left off with is them going, "Oh wow, that Superman guy is so much better than us at this. We have to rethink a lot about our whole worldview now, huh?"
You don't understand the young people! You're right. I'll change from now on.
I won't be shocked, and I can see that being both the foundation for an actually good story and the right kind of meta-narrative to be driving things as an undercurrent going forward.
That's the kind of meta I like. The kind that keeps us creatively accountable. Oh god, not the Bane.
Understand, I don't think there's some grand need for Marvel versus DC to exist on some literal war footing. And while if there's anyone who'd be justified in turning their leadership of this cinematic universe into not just a quest to take Marvel's throne as king of superhero movie mountain, but make a statement about having a better, more meaningful meaningful approach to the material, it would be James Gunn after what he went through, but I don't mean to suggest that's where he's coming from or why either. What I do think is that the Marvel model, or at least the Avengers model for the genre and its ideological conception of the subject, while genuinely a positive, necessarily evolving, and even groundbreaking approach in its day, and which at its peak delivered and continues to deliver an overwhelmingly high-quality level of work that I, along with most of the world, let's not be revisionist about it, have greatly enjoyed and will likely continue to enjoy, also always had its limitations, has run into those limitations more and more often lately, and is basically the only game in town, or only meaningful game in town, for almost the last 20 years of this. For those who've been wondering, where is the Snyderverse in this conversation? It's not in this conversation, because it doesn't matter, and it never mattered. That's why we're here. It basically managed to impose those limitations on the whole genre and beyond, and that's not a good thing, whatever you think of the overall output. More different, successful takes on this material is always for the better. So having the DC Universe, whatever the bigger storyline or mythology plans might be, who knows, launch from having thematically and ideologically declared itself not just as another brand, but as an ideological alternative, planting a flag right up front that not only says, here's what's cool about our heroes, but here's what's kind of less cool about the other guys, seizing the opportunity that you only really get from being the sort of new kid to load up on something like authentic anti-establishment cred in a way the mouse just can't ever do, the rabbit would approve. To me, that's exciting, or at least interesting as a prospect, and sincerely, I spend enough time watching blandly boring, just okay movies that interesting is good news. What they actually do with it narratively in Superman and beyond, like I said, I don't know for sure.
Well, we're waiting.
But I have my guesses. I mean, I don't know if it happens in this first movie, but if they are leaning into Superman as an old-fashioned good guy in a world of cynical anti-heroes, well, one of the most famous Superman stories ever is What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way, aka Superman versus the Elite, and James Gunn really likes hero-villain rhetorical showdowns in the exact key of the famous one from that, so...
You're living in a dream world! Good. Dreams save us. Dreams lift us up and transform us into something better.
You are a god. If you kill me, you'll be just like everybody else.
What's so wrong with that?
Who do you think you are? Scooby? Dooby? Doo!
If we end up getting a variation of that, but with maybe, say, The Authority instead of Manchester Black and the Elite for the movies, wouldn't shock me. Wouldn't shock me at all. I also think it's interesting that so many of these projects, Superman having the word legacy in the title originally, the Batman movie being an Ann Sund project, Supergirl already happening, Lanterns being an old cop, young cop team-up thing, Booster Gold having a show, Paradise Lost being a Wonder Woman prequel, Waller probably has to be about her and her daughter, right, little bit, being centered on legacy, torch passing, and mantles, kind of suggests that generational hero legacies are a running theme here, and, something comic fans have taken notice of from the beginning is that Superman's logo in the new universe is a pretty specific reference. It's the design from Kingdom Come. That's an Elseworlds dark future story from the 90s by Mark Waid and Alex Ross. It's one of the most famous versions of that DC has ever done. Great stuff. It's probably best known for the artwork, but as the story, well, a summary would be an older, disillusioned Superman decides that a younger generation of heroes are too dark and violent and out of control, and gathers the other older heroes to try and police the bad apples in a more militant, heavy-handed fashion to restore order to the chaotic future, and it does not go well.
The only mistake our generation made was creating that generation!
There's more to it in the details. The idea was kind of a clapback to Watchmen, arguing on behalf of comic book optimism as a moral grounding rather than mourning. Is that where this is going? I don't know. But I do know the first time I saw that logo, I fucking gasped out loud just at the implication of it, man.
I thought we'd have more time.
This is going to be good. I have a really strong feeling because this is a good filmmaker who is clearly invested in telling an interesting story. He's got stuff to say, not just meta stuff, not just industry stuff. The general idea of a cynical world encountering a classical figure in itself, having to grapple with that idea that we really seem to be staring down like an early to late Bronze Age DC Comics world that's going to encounter a classic style, but not like man unstuck in time, like a new, old-fashioned, better version superhero that's going to come in and say there's a better way forward in this. If you want to get like generational political about it, like a hopeful millennial Superman coming in to tell, older boomer Gen X superheroes who are grumpy and cynical and skeptical, grimdark about things, and put a pin in it and say, no, fuck this is no bad, don't do it this way, be better. That's interesting. That's something we haven't seen before. We see a little bit of it in what Marvel did with Captain America, which is the Captain America story to tell, but that is, an older character out of the past coming in to show a fallen new world the better way that we used to do it. This is something else. This is new, showing the old the way out of darkness, and that is a really interesting concept if that's what they're doing, and it feels like that is. That log line about truth, justice, and the American way, and I don't think that they're doing it like as a patriotic thing, like a nakedly nationalistic patriotic thing. I don't think that you make a show like Peacemaker, where Peacemaker is the character he is and his father turns out to be who he is, and then you make a Superman show where they're unironically doing truth, justice, and the American way. I think that there is probably an angle in that where it comes back around and he has to grapple with, what does that mean? Am I an American hero or a global hero? There's interesting things being done here. I mean, in their lead-off episode, the bad guys are men's rights MAGA trash who want to invade Themyscira, which we don't know exists yet. This is such interesting stuff. They're grappling with classical ideas and new ideas and just mixing it up in a really bold, different way. I'm not going to say that this is going to be like, edgy, daring, brave, avant-garde art, but this is the kind of stuff that you couldn't do at a strong, self-assured, conquering the world permanent fixture company like a Disney. You could really only do this in a situation like where Warner Brothers is, where this is a big company with money to spend, but they're also falling apart under themselves and, could very well shut down at any moment other than this. And they seem to be, at least in some cases, willing to just throw crap against the wall and see what happens. It didn't work with the Snyderverse. They ended up making a giant pile of bullshit, but here, there might actually be a miracle ready to happen. And, it is very possible that we could see that. And I am more hopeful about this than I have been in a long time for a premise or a project. James Gunn at the helm of the DC right now feels a little bit like what it was to see Peter Jackson take up Lord of the Rings back in the early 2000s and just see a filmmaking team make correct decision after correct decision after correct decision, even when they sounded nuts. Like when some of the casting, and it was like, wait, who the hell is that? You're going to do what? You're not going to cast little person actors as the hobbits? You're going to take, the actors stand on double-sized sets? You're going to do forced perspective for a whole fucking movie? Like, is that gonna work? Are you crazy? And it turned out, no, we are just gonna make the greatest fantasy trilogy ever made. Like, this is what that feels like a little bit. It feels like we're in the presence at the beginning of someone who's about to do something fucking incredible. And I hope it works. I really do. So far, what we've got is one pretty good movie in The Suicide Squad, a great superhero TV show in Peacemaker, and a great cartoon in Creature Commandos. Good Lord, if Superman is as good as it has the potential to be, like I joke about it, James Gunn might save the day. He might do it. I'm Bob, and that's The Big Picture.